Well, hello everybody. Thank you and welcome to the California Food Policy Council's webinar where we will be talking about two pieces of legislation that are pending right now. The first is AB 191, which deals with CalFresh and categorical eligibility, as well as SB 283, which helps to remove barriers for those who have been convicted of drug-related offenses. We're joined today by Alexis Fernandez of the California Food Policy Advocates and Jessica Bartholow of Western Center on Law and Poverty. We'll start our conversation today with AB 191, and then in the second half move into SB 283. Just a couple of things to note. This call is being recorded. If you are on the line, and we ask that you can mute yourself using *6, and you're welcome to unmute yourself at any time using *7. If you have a question while one of our speakers is speaking, please use the raise your hand feature that is in the upper left corner of the webinar. And when we get to the point where we're opening and asking questions, please feel free to speak up. So I just wanted to first thank our first presenter, Alexis Fernandez. We really appreciate you coming to talk about one of the bills that the California Food Policy Advocates is sponsoring this year.
Great. So I'm going to start today, and I just, as a little warning, I have a cold coming on, so excuse me if I start coughing. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about CFPA and who we are, and then, excuse me, let me get some water. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We are all going through that here. So if you listen to the recordings of the last webinars, you get to hear a lot of my coughing last week. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the bill does, the problem that the bill addresses, what we think the overall impacts are. I have an update on some amendments, and then a little bit about status, so where we are today, and what you all can do to get involved in moving the bill forward. So California Food Policy Advocates, and this is the next slide, yes. We're a statewide policy and advocacy organization. We're based out of Oakland, and we do work locally at the state and then some work federally as well on nutrition policies. And so that includes most often CalFresh or SNAP at the federal level, and then a lot on child nutrition, the school meals program, water in schools, school breakfast, and so on. So we work across a number of subjects. So every year we bring forth a legislative agenda, and this year that agenda includes AB 191. And this is a reintroduction of a bill that we worked on last year that you may be familiar with, AB 1560. It's in its current version, AB 191, it was introduced by Assemblymember Bocanegra, and he's in the same district as Assemblymember Fuentes, who we worked with last year. So there is continuum there with the office. So what does AB 191 do? It would make low-income households that include at least one Medi-Cal recipient with a gross income up to 200% of the federal poverty level categorically eligible for CalFresh, with the hopes that this removes one of the barriers that families face, an income barrier, in accessing CalFresh. The current gross income test is 130% of the federal poverty. This would bump it to 200% again for those categorically eligible households with a Medi-Cal recipient. The net income, which is 100% of federal poverty, would still apply. So if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what the bill addresses and who would be impacted. There are approximately 227,000 individuals in California, based on our estimates that we conducted with Mathematica, that are households that include a Medi-Cal recipient and are currently net income eligible. So their net income, and that's income after deductions, is below 100% federal poverty, but their gross income is above 130%. So because of this gross income test, these otherwise eligible households that have high need, their net income is below 100%, cannot access CalFresh today. So we're hoping that by making this change, we actually give workers the opportunity to identify this high need and get families that access to CalFresh. In addition, we have a
estimated 30 to 33% of the current Medi-Cal population that's eligible for CalFresh but is not participating today. And we hope that by strengthening the connection between the two programs, that these families at least are encouraged, more likely to be encouraged to apply for CalFresh, or we're sending the message that CalFresh and Medi-Cal really come together. And so we're emphasizing by making policy changes that a package of benefits that includes health and nutrition is really the best way to go for folks. So when we talk about impacts, we're looking at improved alignment between CalFresh and Medi-Cal, and hoping or knowing that this can increase participation, it can boost administrative efficiency, and increases the likelihood, as I just mentioned, that low-income households have access to a package of benefits that support their overall health and well-being. We know that, or we hope if passed, that AB 191 would boost CalFresh participation among households with a Medi-Cal recipient. And I think, as I mentioned before, it emphasizes that critical role that nutrition plays in supporting overall health and well-being. So that's just a quick overview, and what I want to talk about next is where we are in the process currently. Coming out of we came through the assembly, off the assembly floor, and coming out of Assembly Appropriations, which is the second committee in the House of Origin, we took amendments to AB 191, and the amendments, the crux of them did not have to do with the actual changes I just discussed. We actually included cleanup related to a bill that we worked on in 2011, AB 6, which moved us to semi-annual reporting, eliminated finger imaging, and then implemented the Heat and Eat program. And so the amendments ensure that the original intent of Heat and Eat is preserved. What we found is that there was an inadvertent negative impact on households that were homeless and applied for CalFresh once it was implemented. And so these amendments simply clarify that a homeless household applying for CalFresh can participate in the Heat and Eat program if it's to their benefit. And if it's not to their benefit and it actually would cause them to see a decrease in benefits, we would allow them to not use the Heat and Eat program and instead apply for benefits under the traditional process before Heat and Eat was implemented. And so that's something we were working on with the Department of Social Services on, just to make sure that it meets their needs and that the intent of that program is to increase benefits when we can, not decrease benefits. And I'm happy to talk more about that, but that's the amendment that we took coming out of appropriations in the Assembly. So in terms of next steps, AB 191 is heading to the Senate Human Services Committee. It hasn't been confirmed online, but it looks like the hearing date will be June 25th. Excuse me. And I've listed on the slide the committee members of the Human Services Committee. I think there are some opportunities here to get involved. You can definitely submit a letter of support. You can encourage your partners to submit a letter of support. I think generally, as we talk about 191, you have the opportunity to make the case for the importance of CalFresh to your members, especially if some of them are on the committee. And you also have the opportunity to emphasize the connection between health and nutrition. I did want to bring up a special kind of LA request that I see coming up in the near future. It's likely, knock on wood, that we'll make it through Human Services Committee as we have in the past. And after that comes Senate Appropriations, and that's where last year 1560 got quote unquote stuck. So knowing that that's coming up and that the chair of that committee is a Los Angeles member, Senator De Leon, I think there is an opportunity for folks in the LA area to really get involved at a district level in emphasizing how important this bill is to the chair and any other members of the committee as well, but really kind of making the case for AB 191, making the case for CalFresh, making sure that he knows that there is a positive impact that can take place because of 191 in his community and just in general because of CalFresh and how important those benefits are. So I think that's the big ask looking forward, particularly for folks in the LA area. So I'll stop there and I'll let, if anybody has questions or needs any clarification, I'm happy to do that now.
So we have one question coming in via chat, and it's less about the specifics of AB 191 and more about how it relates to the other pieces of legislation that are working to remove barriers from CalFresh. And I know we'll be talking more about SB 283, but people were curious about SB 672 Lino and the CalFresh eligibility guidelines and the suite of others. So could you give us an overview of how all of these work together?
So I mean, I think generally speaking, we all know that we still have a lot of work to do here in California to improve access to CalFresh. And combined, all these efforts combined kind of bring us closer to achieving that goal, in that there are still a series of small barriers that are keeping different populations from accessing the program. So if we kind of think about it as picking at a larger problem, these all take us in the same direction of improved access and participation. They may not look related when you just kind of look at them individually, but they are.
You there?
And I think
sorry.
So I think the example with 672, and Jess can also speak to this, is that, for example, the Medi-Cal households that are likely to have higher incomes yet come in below the net income are households that are working and have really high child care expenses. And those high child care expenses make their need greater because they have less income for food. 672 addresses how child care expenses are verified and how we process that deduction. So they may not look related when you're looking at them separately, but in reality they are, in that these households are hopefully going to come in under 191 if it passes, and then you have this issue of now you need to verify these expenses. And the easier that is, the more likely that these things are to work well together. So just generally speaking, these efforts to remove barriers lead to an environment where it's just easier to access CalFresh, and they are related. Maybe not like you don't see it in the moment, but they really are.
Great, thank you. And then one additional question was just about the changes that we're making to the percentage of the federal poverty level, and how does California compare now to other states or federal regulations around this, and then what would how would this change us in comparison to other states who are working in similar programs?
So I'm not sure I'm clear on the question, or if we'd be able to get clarification on what work around the federal poverty level there.
I think it's just we've had, I'll give a little context and see if I get anything else chatted in, but I think that people have been, there are a lot of things that are about CalFresh that are regulated on the state level, and then there are things that are regulated on the federal level. And so I think the clarification was just looking at how much flexibility do we have with the federal regulations. Is this something that is going to align us with rules that are or to be more consistent with federal law? Is this a waiver? Would we be in a waiver situation?
Right. Okay. Sure. So the federal tool, I'll call it a tool, it's also sometimes referred to as an option that we would be using to make this happen in California, is the categorical eligibility option. And so there are about, if I remember correctly the number, it's 27 other states who've already used categorical eligibility in some way to increase the gross income test and or remove the asset test. So here in California, we used categorical eligibility, which is the federal option, to remove the asset test for CalFresh households. This 191 is a kind of variation on the option to raise the gross income test, in that we're dealing with the Medi-Cal population, and in some other states they deal with the entire caseload. So it is an effort to maximize our usage of federal options and bring us up to speed with other states who have done the same thing. But it wouldn't require a waiver. It's something that we're allowed to do currently. What is unique about California is that we do legislate a lot of our CalFresh policy, where in other states they might do this administratively. So we're basically trying to put the legislation in place that would require the Department of Social Services to use this option. And I hope that answers the question. I'm not sure if there's another component of it.
It seems like it did. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Alexis. So I think we're going to move on and do SB 283, and then we'll take questions about both at the end. Jessica, it's all you.
Great. Do you have the slides up in front of you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. Wonderful. This is Jessica Bartholow from the Western Center on Law and Poverty. I'm a legislative advocate here in our Sacramento office, and the Western Center on Law and Poverty is a statewide organization that, in addition to engaging in the legislative and budget process to advocate for low-income Californians, we also will work with legal services to provide training and sometimes engage in litigative efforts when the legal rights of low-income Californians in the areas of public benefit, healthcare, and housing are not being adhered to. The bill I'm going to talk about today is Senate Bill 283. The author is Senator Lonnie Hancock, and the purpose of the bill is to reduce barriers to reentry. The bill, when it was introduced, was in a different version, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But the goal of the bill as it currently stands in print is to remove the barrier to CalFresh benefits, federally funded nutrition assistance, to people who are leaving prison or leaving jail and reentering the community, as long as they are participating with their parole or probation. So let's set the stage for how this bill was introduced. Next slide, please. When we look at AB 109, was prison realignment of nonviolent offenders to county jail. It was a bill passed in 2010 and implemented beginning 2011. And it has completely changed the prison population and the jail population in the state of California. And shifted the responsibility for oversight of those prisoners to the county government. For some of those counties, those folks will go into county jail, but in many cases they're released out into the community. So California has a real, it has a lot of stake at helping make sure that these people who were previously in prison for a drug-related crime, a nonviolent drug-related crime, are successful in reentry. We currently have the second highest recidivism rate in the country. This is down from the first, so we are moving in the right direction. But with all of those who are recently released into the community, we know that basic needs support is one of the keys to helping them stay there and not re-enter into the community and re-enter into prison or jail. Research shows this, and I can talk a little bit about the research. There's plenty of bipartisan research that shows that having access to public benefits when somebody is re-entering is very important, and that's for all people, but this is especially the case for women, for low-income women. The research on reoffending patterns among women has found that state-sponsored support programs, especially those that have job training or health or nutrition or education and housing, or address any of the short-term economic needs, can reduce the odds of recidivism for women by 83%. 83%. And the research in California also shows that for most of those women who do have a prior drug felony conviction, a nonviolent one, they are returning back into homes where children live. So making sure to prevent recidivism, stabilize the household through nutrition assistance makes sense. This is why the majority of states have already enacted this policy. Next slide, please. So again, looking more at the recidivism rates and why having nutrition assistance for people with prior drug felony convictions is important. We look at 2/3 of those who are released from prison are arrested, and 1/2 will be reincarcerated within 3 years after release.
CalFresh, again, as I said before, has is as one of the basic needs packages, or as one of the components of a basic needs package, can help families stay into their community. Adults who have prior convictions stay into their community and not recidivate. And this is important not only because it's a more humane response to people who have a prior conviction, to help them with nutrition and nutrition assistance instead of leave them hungry and desperate. It also reduces the costly cycle of imprisonment. And the Senate Appropriations Analysis shows that for every 200 inmates that are deterred from committing new crimes, general fund and local jail can save $2 million for general fund and $7.3 million for local jail cost savings. So for every 200 inmates, that's it, that are prevented from going back to jail, there is a tremendous amount of savings locally. So again, SB 283, by ending the lifetime ban on CalFresh for all people with prior drug felony convictions, helps us not only prevent hunger among those populations, but also prevent recidivism. So a little bit about the bill. We had originally introduced the bill, SB 283, with the Senator as a bill that removed the lifetime ban for CalFresh and for CalWorks. And CalWorks is our basic needs assistance program for very low-income families. The bill was passed out of the Senate Appropriations and amended at that point to narrow the bill just to CalFresh benefits. So SB 283 only now applies to CalFresh. And remember, it only repeals the lifetime ban for people who are participating in their parole or probation. And this is why the Probation Officers Association of California has supported the bill and is in strong support of the bill, along with 130 other organizations throughout the state who have sent letters in support of this piece of legislation. The bill is now heading to the Assembly Human Services Committee and will likely be heard at the end of the month here in June. It will need to pass through that committee and then through the Assembly Appropriations Committee before going to the Assembly floor. And then we head to the governor. So the next targets for advocacy, and where we'd really love the food community to help us weigh in, is in Assembly Human Services and also with the Assembly Appropriations Committee and Chairman Gatto of that committee. Certainly weighing in with the Speaker and the Governor would be helpful as well. Let me talk about some of the ways that you can do that. Next screen, and we should be on screen 5. On screen 5, here are the things that you can do to help. We have sample letters of support, and perhaps a copy of that sample could be made available with this presentation online. And those can come from individuals or organizations. Again, we have over 130 organizations in support, and they include several local sheriffs, the whole entire association of probation and parole officers, as well as some individual and local probation or parole officers, many anti-hunger organizations, and prison reentry advocates as well. We also have a petition that's online, and you can have access to that petition by going to our Facebook page. SB 283 has a Facebook page, and on that page we post the calendar of hearings as well as support letters, sample support letters, and access to the petition, and as well as any media that comes out. One exciting piece of media that we had recently was an endorsement by the New York Times opinion page that stated that these kinds of lifetime bans prevent people from being able to start over and stay in the community successfessually. This is certainly a strong message coming from an important national paper, and we hope as you're educating people about the bill, you can share that piece as well, and that's linked on our Facebook page. make your support for the bill public. Sometimes because it says the word felon in the bill or in the statute proposed, people are nervous to be public about their support for the bill. But there is a growing movement behind these lifetime bans, and we hope that you will help others see that it's inhumane to deny basic needs assistance, food, to somebody because of a prior drug felony conviction, and especially when they're participating in probation and parole as requested. You can volunteer. In a lobby day, we usually go visit the members of committees before the appropriations and before the policy hearings, and you're welcome to come and join us on those lobby day visits. Participate in call-in days, and again, if you are on our Facebook page, you'll hear about those. We also, if you want to be involved in a little deeper level, we have biweekly calls with the grassroots that we've been having for a couple of years now as we've been trying to pursue more aggressively this effort to repeal the lifetime ban on CalFresh. You can share your ideas about how to mobilize support. There's so many great ideas out there and new ones coming forward. We'd love to hear if you have your own ideas for how we might continue to support SB 283 through the Governor's signature. And once we get this bill passed, we're going to have to let people know that they are no longer denied assistance to this basic needs support of CalFresh, even though they may have had a prior drug felony conviction or even in some cases denied assistance because of it. So we'll have to let people know that the rule is repealed and they don't have to be hungry. Next slide. If you have questions, I'd love to take any of those questions now. And again, really just appreciate all those who are participating in the call or listening to the presentation afterward, and for your interest in CalFresh and your ongoing support for preventing and ending hunger here in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And one question I can answer right away. As you can see, Jessica's contact information is up on the slide. So along with the Western Center on Law and Poverty's website, where more information is available. And yes, I will be sending out the letter of support to those participating on the call, and we'll make sure to have copies of that at our June 12th meeting if people would like to take that back to their councils and alliances. Thank you for that question. Another question that we had received actually before the webinar was a question about are there other categories of past felons who are not able to access CalFresh benefits, or is this just limited to those who have been convicted of a drug felony?
So the question is, are there other types of people? Are there other people with different types of felony convictions that are prevented from?
Yes, or is this just something that or is this just something that only relates to those who have been convicted of drug felonies? So, for example, if someone has committed an assault, do they face the same challenges that someone is convicted of a drug felony does?
Right. This rule, the rule to ban CalFresh for drug felon convictions, it dates back to the 1996 enactment of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act, known as Welfare Reform, from 1996. And on the floor debate of that bill, this lifetime ban was put into place for both TANF and food stamps, now known as SNAP. And since the implementation of that 1996 law, the federal administration removed the bar and allowed states to implement it at their option. It only applied to people with prior drug felony related convictions and not to any other convictions. However, I do want to put out there that I think that it's a dangerous thing to talk about denying benefits to anybody as a result of their prior convictions, and we would oppose we would oppose and we do oppose any efforts to expand the list of people who would be under a bar or who should be under a bar. It's wrong to deny basic needs assistance to people with drug felony related convictions or any other convictions.
No, and I think that we've typically seen these questions come in. It was a part of the report card conversation where someone had been having a conversation with someone who worked for a prosecutor's office and was talking about the difference between a nonviolent drug offense and a violent drug offense and kind of where that lies. But the point I think of the challenge is that this isn't something that is excuse me, is not practiced across different offenses, that it specifically targets those with drug offenses. So it's not exempting those who have been convicted of drug felonies from something that other felons are subject to. That this is really a targeted thing that is not practiced in any other with any other group of people who have been convicted of felonies. So sorry, that was very rambly, but I think it was coming from the opposite perspective, not wanting to put more restrictions on people, but have everybody kind of under the same consistency of being able to access after they're released.
Yeah, it's our belief that that there shouldn't be any bans, any lifetime bans for people as a result of any felony or other conviction. Once they've served their time that's been determined by a judge, then they should be done.
And then our next question is about, again, another piece of legislation that relates to this question, which is SB 480. And the participant was wondering, how does SB 480, the bill introduced by Senator Yee, relate to this piece of legislation?
SB 480 is a bill that suspends eligibility for somebody who's been incarcerated. Is that right? For a period of time. We are Western Center is not a sponsor of the bill, but we are in support of the bill. And the point here is that if you are in a household that receives CalFresh and you have been arrested, not tried, just arrested for a crime, you may be in a local jail for a period of time that might make you ineligible for assistance. And when you come back into the household, let's say you've been proved innocent of the crime, or you've been convicted but let out on bail, or the sentence was very small and you're back in the household. If it's a short period of time, we'd like to avoid the additional cost to the county of having that person have to reapply and come back into to be back into the household. The person should be able to simply have a suspension of aid and come back on. Otherwise, it's additional work for the county, and it's additional period during a very precarious transitional time for that family to make sure that they're not going without food. Does that help? How do they relate? I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, I think that it was both to do with people accessing benefits after they were able to leave prison, and so I think that people, especially in our, I don't know if that's this particular caller's question, but in the previous discussions we had before, people saw them as related legislation that would both prevent barriers for those who had been convicted or charged of a crime.
Sure, and I guess I would say what does make them potentially related is the fact that California has the second highest recidivism rate in the country, and that we are not utilizing all the tools in our toolkit to prevent that from happening. And as a result, families are going hungry, and we're paying more as a society for a jail bed than a little help with food.
Are there any other questions from our participants? Okay, well, I just wanted to again thank our presenters, Jessica and Alexis. We will be making sure that their information is available to those of you who are watching or listening after our live broadcast. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. Also just want to give a preview. We have one more webinar in our series before we are going to have our June 12th council meeting. Daniela, do you want to give a preview of what you guys will be discussing tomorrow?
Yes, we will be preparing our council and alliance members for the section of our meeting called Capital Day and how they can better use social media effectively to run a campaign in the future.
Great. Well, thank you. We look forward to hearing from you all tomorrow and seeing you on the 12th. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. I will say that after you exit the meeting, there is an opportunity for you to leave comments and provide initial feedback on what you heard today, what would be more informative for you to learn about in the future. There will be a survey that's going out about all of our webinars before the 12th, but this is your first chance to send us your questions and your concerns. So look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand by.